Dad. In this video, I'm going to be reacting to his story.
Crossword puzzle alone on the park bench, so I crouched down and asked if she was lost. She swatted my hand away. I am a 40-year-old woman, you absolute buffoon. I stepped back and saw she was 2 feet tall, and I figured she was just a confused toddler who'd wandered off, so I scooped her up to bring her to the police station, absolutely convinced I was doing the right thing. She kicked and twisted the whole way there. Unhand me this instant, you enormous oaf. This is kidnapping. I took out the tiny stuffed bear key ring from my pocket. You cutie, calm down now. I waved the bear in her face. Look, someone wants to meet you. She pinched me as hard as she could. You galloping imbecile. You must have the same intellectual capacity as a houseplant. A mom on another bench pulled her kid closer as I marched past. I held her out with 2 hands at arm's length until we got to the police station. She scoffed. Now you'll finally see what I was talking about. I took back the bear and set her on the counter. She smoothed her tiny blazer, lifted her chin, and nodded. Afternoon, officer. The officer nodded like they knew each other. Good to see you, Diane. He pointed at me. So, who's this guy? She rolled her eyes. Another idiot who thinks I'm a helpless child. He typed her name into his monitor and turned the screen around. Diane Holding, 43 years old, world's smallest woman. She straightened her tie, lifted her chin, and delivered her verdict. You've made a rather profound error in judgment. My mouth was open in shock, and the bear was still dangling from my finger. She tilted her head. Are you lost? She rallied out the door and climbed back onto a...
The heck you mean she rallied out the door? Also, this video was the most confusing video I've ever watched in my life. Look at her hair. She's got grey hair, you moron. How do you think she's toddler? She's got grey hair.
Bench to pick up her crossword right where I'd interrupted it, while I stayed behind to explain why I'd hauled a grown woman in off the street. My big brother Patrick...
You better explain that, bro.
Showed me his VR headset and said, "Do you want to prank Grandpa?" I instantly nodded because I wanted to play with my older brother. But when Patrick placed the headset on his head and laughed, "Check this out, Grandpa. It's modern technology." He turned it on, and Grandpa immediately started screaming and dropped to the ground, shouting, "Please make it stop." I got a bad feeling and asked, "Patrick, what did you do?" But he just pulled out his phone. I loaded up a realistic D-Day simulation on Call of Duty. Right now, Grandpa sees grenades flying at him as well as blood and gunfire. My legs froze because Grandpa had served at D-Day, and it gave him...
Bro, that is just not funny. Absolutely not funny, bro.
PTSD for life. He was now being forced to relive it. I ran to take the headset off because Grandpa was curled in a ball crying, but Patrick pushed me to the floor. You said you wanted to prank him. I realized I wasn't strong enough to overpower him, and when I raised my head, I saw him sellotaping the VR headset to Grandpa so he couldn't take it off. Then he took his phone out and started recording. Grandpa sobbed, trying his hardest to remove the headset, and Patrick was doubled over laughing. This is going straight to TikTok. I knew I had to do something because Grandpa had given up trying to remove the headset and was now just praying at the sky. His best friends were getting ripped apart by mortar shells in front of him, and he could only watch. I tried to lunge past Patrick to reach Grandpa, but he stopped me with one hand like it was nothing. Then we both heard it. If I've done it once, I'll do it again. Grandpa was rising to his feet, his legs trembling, and I realized he fully believed the war he was seeing was real. He grabbed his cane and raised it like a gun, charging straight ahead. The cane hit Patrick in the chest, and he fell to the floor. I screamed.
That is something that people would call karma.
Grandpa stopped, but he was already on his knees, screaming, "Die, German, die." He jabbed Patrick in the sternum.
Die, German, die. That's crazy. But yeah, this is what people call karma.
This cane, thinking it was a knife. My heart pounded as I ran behind him and ripped as hard as I could, and the sellotaped headset finally came off. Grandpa suddenly jolted up, looking at me with wild, bloodshot eyes. "What's happening? Where's the enemy?" He pointed the cane at me. Then he looked down at his grandson under him. Patrick groaned and wheezed, and I realized his ribs were cracked and purple. Grandpa stared up at me, his face returning to normal. "I'm not at war." I shook my head while heaving. "No, Grandpa, you're at home. Now let's go get some donuts." I threw the VR headset onto Patrick's chest as we walked away. My sea crew were hauling treasure chests across the ocean when we heard a scream. I dropped the rope I was holding in shock. I hollered, "Pirates incoming! Keep the Queen's gold safe!" My entire crew scrambled to protect the treasure chests, while the ship slammed into our side. Hooks bit our rail, and dozens of pirates poured onto our deck, screaming at the top of their lungs. They tied us up and held us down to poles on the ship, and their biggest man hauled our first chest into the sunlight, wedged his axe under the lid, and cracked the seal open. My whole body froze with fear, because the gold belonged to the Queen, And if they stole it, the Queen's Navy would hunt down this ship and hang every last one of us. Their captain strolled through the spilled gold. The booty's mine. The ship's mine. He pointed at me and the other strongest men on the ship. Get these dogs row for me now. His crew started unchaining us, and I raised my voice over their laughter. Put it back, all of it. Sail away, and hope that Her Majesty never learns your names. The
That's a
captain crouched
bold
down.
statement.
And pointed his hook at me. Make him walk the plank. I gulped and tried my best to stay calm. A pirate pulled me up by the shoulders and shoved me towards a plank. He pointed at the ocean. She's real feisty today. She'll have you dead in no time. My entire crew was forced to watch as I slowly put one foot in front of the other. The captain grinned. Dead men tell no tales. And while my left foot hovered over the icy water, I heard screaming behind me. I turned around and their lookout shrieked, "Sail ho! The Queen's Navy is here!" A warship.
The Queen's Navy? Also, what the heck did I pause on? Also want to clear something up.
While my left foot hovered over the icy water.
What is happening with bro's back leg?
I heard screaming behind me. I turned around and their lookout shrieked, "Sail ho! The Queen's Navy is here!" A warship 5 times our size filled the horizon. It had cannons locked and loaded and was ready to kill us all. The captain's grin died and he shrieked, "Put it back! Put it all back!" And grown pirates started shoveling doubloons into chests with their bare hands. One pirate knelt on the deck, pressing 2 halves of a seal back together, and I leaned my head against the mast. You can't unbreak a seal. He took out a gun and got ready to turn it inwards. I shook the gas station windows, and the lights flickered, and I grabbed the counter. The fluorescence steadied, and I exhaled. I was 16, and pulling a solo shift because the other guy called in sick. The storm had been building for an hour, and every time the thunder cracked, the lights blinked, and the dread punched through me. I paced past the
That's convenient though. That he had to do a solo shift because the other guy called in sick. That's just the type of shit you'd hear, innit, though?
fire extinguisher on the wall for the 10th time. A box of zip ties sat on the shelf under the counter next to the scissors. I counted the register twice to keep busy and slid the drawer shut, and every light on the block died at the same time. The register died, and the cooler stopped, and I grabbed the counter because the dark was instant and total. I yanked out my phone, and the screen said, "Citywide power outage." My boss had already texted, "Stay put, lock the doors." I locked the front door and paced behind the counter, and the security camera above the register blinked once and went dark with everything else. I texted my friend Nate because he always answered no matter what time it was. "Bro, the whole city just went dark. You seeing this?" No response. Nate was the kind of kid who texted back before you put your...
No shit. Of course he's not going to respond. It's a power outage. There's no Wi-Fi. I don't know how you are texting.
Phone down. We shared a desk in shop class, and he chewed the inside of his cheek when he was thinking. Rain hammered the roof, and nothing else made a sound. Something banged against the side of the building, and I dove behind the counter with my heart hammering. Wind was rattling the propane cage outside. I shoved a toppled display back up with shaking hands and laughed at myself for jumping. A knock on the glass. I spun, and a woman was standing in the rain holding a sleeping toddler against her chest. She knocked again.
Don't let her in. She's an anomaly.
Her face was desperate through the wet glass. I flipped the lock and pulled the door open. "Can I just get gas? My daughter's asleep and I'm almost on empty." The toddler's head was on her shoulder, and one tiny fist was clutching a stuffed elephant, and she was drooling onto her mom's shirt. Of course, pumps are down, but I can flip the manual override in the back. "Thank you so much. We've been driving for 40 minutes trying to find somewhere open. My husband's deployed and it's just me and her, and I've been going in circles in the dark." I handed her a paper towel, and she wiped the rain off the toddler's face, and the little girl scrunched her nose and squeezed the elephant tighter without waking up. She could sleep through a hurricane. She basically is. The woman laughed, and the relief of having another person loosened the knot in my chest. "I'm Caleb, Michelle, and this is Lily." I noticed a name tag safety pinned to the elephant's ear, Ellie, in wobbly marker. Michelle caught me squinting at it. She named it herself. Can't spell yet, but she got close. She bounced Lily and hummed something, and Lily's fist tightened on Ellie's trunk in her sleep, and Michelle kissed the top of her head. "We'll be home soon, baby." The gas station felt warmer and smaller with them in it, and the blackout didn't matter. I went to the back room to flip the manual pump switch. I could hear Michelle laughing at something Lily did in her sleep. I could hear Michelle laughing at something Lily did in her sleep. The front door chimed behind me. I came back out and my stomach dropped through the floor. 3 men in ski masks and gloves inside the gas station.
Why would you leave the front door unlocked? fucking moron. Why would you leave the front door unlocked? It's not even 3 minutes and I'm already yelling at someone.
One already behind the counter, the second flipping the lock, the third 2 feet from Michelle. She yanked
Look, the fucking door next time. That's like me putting my address on social media or something like that. Or that's like me just leaving the front door wide open for people to come in.
Lily against her chest, and the girl woke up whimpering, and Michelle's face went white.
Finally, we have some emotion from Lily.
Thing warm about the last 10 minutes died. Nobody moves. He grabbed my collar, and I swung at him, and he caught my wrist and slammed it down, and had a zip tie cranked around both wrists. And slammed it down, and had a zip tie cranked around both wrists.
A zip tie? What kind of kinky shit is he on?
Pinned my legs and dragged me to the counter, and zip tied my hands to the metal shelf underneath. I yanked immediately, and the
Yeah,
shelf
kinky
rattled,
shit.
and he kicked me in the
Just
ribs
kinky
so
shit.
hard something cracked, and I
Oh.
curled around.
Why does his ribs always crack in these stories?
Ripped my name tag off. Caleb, I know your name. When this is over, you forget everything. He pointed at Michelle. That baby stops crying, we have a problem. Lily was wailing. Michelle pressed the girl's face against her shoulder and rocked, and the terror on her face gutted me so completely. I pulled at the zip tie until my skin tore and blood ran down both forearms and dripped off my elbows. Michelle saw it, and her face crumpled, and she mouthed, "Stop," but I shook my head and kept pulling. The big one ripped the cash drawer out, and bills scattered. 300? That's it? He swept the drawer off the counter, and it crashed into the chips. We hit the houses. No alarms. No cameras. This is home base. He pulled a list of addresses from his pocket. The small one crouched in front of Lily, his head tilted, almost gentle. How old? Michelle's voice shook. 18 months. The gentleness vanished when he straightened up. Keep her quiet. 2 of them went out into the dark. The small one stayed, jittery, pacing. His mask was crooked, and I could see his jaw, and something about it tugged at the back of my brain. The way he chewed the inside of his cheek. I'd seen someone do that every day in shop class. The second they left, I started pulling at the shelf. The screws were loose in the old wood. I braced my feet and pulled, and my cracked ribs screamed, and I bit down until I tasted blood, and the screws ripped free. I flattened behind the counter. The security camera had a tiny green light. Battery backup. Still recording. I grabbed the scissors and sawed through the zip tie, and it snapped, and blood was running down both wrists, and relief surged so hard through me, my head.
What is happening, bro?
Red metal, 10 feet. He turned from the window and walked toward Michelle. Your car still running? She nodded. Keys. She pulled back. Please. Her car seat's in there. He grabbed for the keys, and she twisted, and Lily screamed, and the fury was so instant and blinding, my body moved before my
Punch
brain
him.
caught up. I ripped the extinguisher off the wall and swung at the back of his legs, and he went down hard. He rolled and kicked me in the stomach, and I doubled over but held on. I swung again, and his shoulder crunched, and he crashed into the chip display, and the whole unit toppled and came to the glass.
Yeah, get your own back here story. Come on, boy.
Exploded everywhere. He grabbed a bottle and hurled it at my head, and I ducked, and it shattered against the wall. I charged and swung low and caught his knee, and he buckled. Ellie was on the floor between us, staring up with button eyes. I slammed the extinguisher into his chest, and he let go. Michelle, run! Your car! She sprinted for the door with Lily screaming. I shoved through the back room door and slammed it and threw my weight against it, and he hit it from the other side so hard my feet slid. I jammed the mop handle through the door handle and burst out the back exit. Michelle's van was at the pump. She was turning the key, and the engine clicked dead. She'd been running it for 40 minutes. Dead battery. The panic was choking me. I sprinted to the hood and slammed my palms on it. Pop it! She was shaking so hard she couldn't find the latch. Lily was screaming in the back. Michelle, the hood! She found it, and I ripped the cables and dried the terminals with my shirt. And inside the store, the mop handle cracked. He was almost through. Try now! Click. Nothing. I slammed the battery housing and corrosion crumbled off the terminal. Again! Click. The engine coughed and died. The back door was splintering. I grabbed both terminals and squeezed them against the posts with my bare hands. Now! The engine caught and roared, and I yanked my hands free and slammed the hood. Drive! Don't stop! What about drive? She tore out, and the taillights vanished. I sprinted to the front and hauled the door shut with my bloody hands slipping and grabbed the padlock from the propane cage, and it took 3 tries to snap it through. He was locked inside, pounding on the glass. The back door splintered open behind me. He was getting out, headlights coming fast. The other 2. The van pulled in, and the big one jumped out. What happened? He got out. Woman's gone. The big one scanned the dark. I was behind the air pump, 15 feet away. Find him. I ran. Vaulted the fence, and my ribs screamed, and I stumbled through a backyard. Fence rattling behind me. Boots on grass. I cut through a yard, and a motion light clicked on, and I was lit up, and I dove over the next fence, and landed in a garden, and kept running. I shoved through a hedge, and thorns ripped my arms, and came out on a pitch-black street, and sprinted 3 blocks, and ducked into an alley behind a dumpster. Flashlight beams at the end of the alley. Check over here. I pressed my face into my knees, and pulled my feet in, and the beam swept past the dumpster 6 inches from my shoes. He's gone. Come on. We're losing time on the houses. Boots fading. They went back to robbing the neighborhood. I stayed behind the dumpster, shaking and crying from exhaustion. Then I heard screaming. Not from the gas station. From a house 2 streets over. A woman screaming, "Get out of my house," and glass breaking, and I could hear it cutting through the rain, and I knew exactly what was happening. They were inside someone's home. I should have stayed behind the dumpster. I should have waited for the sirens. But Michelle's face flashed through my head, and the sound of Lily crying, and I was terrified. But I shoved myself up.
Go on his story, go.
A little yellow house with the front door kicked open. I crouched.
I bet this is going to be Michelle's house.
911 with shaking, bloody fingers. 3 men are robbing a house on Miller Street. Yellow house. Broken front door. There's a woman inside screaming. I hung up. Inside, I could hear them tearing through cabinets, and the woman was inside screaming. I hung up. Inside, I could hear them tearing through cabinets, and the woman was sobbing. I grabbed a garden gnome off the porch next door and hurled it through the side window of the robber's van, and the alarm erupted. The big one came crashing through the front door, and I was already running. He saw me in the streetlight for half a second. It's the kid from the station. Both of them came after me. I sprinted down the alley, and the big one was fast for his
Run his story, run, rabbit, run.
left and grabbed a recycling bin and threw it behind me, and plastic bottles exploded across the pavement, and he tripped and went down hard
Yeah.
and cursed. I vaulted a chain link fence and dropped into a yard.
That's something people call karma.
So I crawled under a deck and pressed myself flat against the dirt, and cobwebs stuck to my face, and something skittered across my hand, and I clamped my jaw shut to keep from screaming. Boots on the pavement above me, flashlight beams sweeping through the fence slats. The light crept along the edge of the deck 6 inches from my face. Check under there. We don't have time. That alarm's gonna bring every neighbor on the block. We go now. The van peeled out. I crawled out from under the deck and spit dirt out of my mouth and stumbled back to the yellow house. The old woman was standing in her doorway in a bathrobe, clutching a phone and shaking. "Are you okay?" They took my mother's jewelry box. It was the only thing I had left of her. Her voice broke, and I grabbed the porch railing because my legs were about to give out. "The police are on their way." I called them. She looked at my wrists. The gauze from the zip ties had soaked through, and blood was dripping off my fingers onto her welcome mat. "Oh, honey, you're bleeding everywhere." "I'm okay." "You are not okay. You're a child." She went inside and came back with a dish towel and wrapped it around my worst wrist and tied it tight, and her hands were gentle and steady, even though she'd just been robbed. "What's your name?" "Caleb." "Caleb, why on earth did you run toward this house?" "Because I could hear you screaming." She pressed her hand against my cheek, and her eyes filled up. I heard sirens getting closer, and I turned and ran back toward the gas station because the night wasn't over. The parking lot was dark and empty. The padlock was on the front door, but the back door was hanging off its hinges. I stepped through, and glass crunched under my shoes. The store was trashed, chips and soda and broken glass, and the cash drawer on the floor. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from where I dropped it. Then I heard breathing behind the ice freezer. I raised the extinguisher and crept toward the sound. The green glow of the security camera lit up a face, and I stumbled backward. Nate Mitchell. I'd known that jaw. I'd been staring at it all night through the crooked mask, and my brain had been screaming at me to recognize it, and I wouldn't let myself. 4th grade. He came to my birthday party, and we ate so much cake we both threw up. Shared
Bruh.
every single day for 2 years. He was holding his shoulder where I'd hit him with the extinguisher, and tears were running down his face. Nate, Caleb, a woman and a baby were in this store. A little girl with a stuffed elephant was screaming on the floor while you stood over her. He flinched at every word. I told them the station was closed. I told my brother. Your brother kicked my ribs in. He's my brother. I couldn't say no. You could have said no. You have my number. You sat next to me in study hall yesterday. I know. He pressed his face into his hands. He said nobody gets hurt. Quick money. My brother got out of county 6 months ago. He showed up at my house and said he had a plan, and I was going to help. You could have said no. You've met my brother. He was right. I had just met his brother. The man who cracked my rib and ripped a cash register apart with his bare hands. He moved into my room, took my bed, ate my food, told me I owed him because he didn't snitch on me for something I didn't even do. Nate wiped his face. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you what happened. Headlights swept through the windows. The van was back. Nate's face went white. They're back. My brother won't leave without me. He grabbed my arm. If he finds you here, he's not letting you walk out. The flashlight cut through the broken back doorway. The big one ducked in, and he looked even bigger in the dark, and his boots crunched on glass. He was carrying a crowbar from the van. Nate, let's go. Nate squeezed my arm. strong. Stay down. He stood up. I'm here. The flashlight hit his face. Where's the kid? Gone. He ran. The big one grabbed Nate by the collar and shoved him toward the back door. Nate stumbled and planted his feet. Wait. We don't wait. I said wait. The big one swung the flashlight beam around the store and it landed on me, crouched behind the aisle, and I could feel it on my face like a heat lamp. He's still here? He shoved Nate aside and came down the aisle with the crowbar raised, and he was twice my size, and the fury on his face was volcanic. You locked my boy in. You let the woman go. You called the cops on us at that house. I raised the extinguisher. That's not going to stop me. I squeezed the handle and sprayed him point blank, and he screamed and staggered, clawing at his eyes, and crashed into the cooler doors, and glass shattered. The second guy came through the back door. Nate stepped into the aisle between us. He spread his arms wide and planted his feet. Enough! The second guy stopped. Nate's brother was screaming and wiping his eyes. Get out of my way! No! Nate, I swear to God, move! This is my friend. His voice cracked. His mom drove me to school when mine wouldn't. She packed me lunch because nobody packed mine. I sat next to him every day for 2 years, and he never once made me feel like I was less than anyone. He was crying and shaking and half the size of his brother, and he didn't move. I'm done. I did this because you told me to, and I watched a baby scream on a floor because of us, and I'm done. His brother lunged around him with the crowbar, and Nate grabbed his arm, and they crashed into the shelf, and cans rained down, and I swung the extinguisher and connected with the brother's back, and he dropped the crowbar and howled. The second guy bolted for the back door. Nate and his brother were on the ground, and Nate was holding his brother's arm with both hands, screaming, "Stop!" And I kicked the crowbar down the aisle and grabbed the front door key ring off the wall, and my bloody hands dropped it twice, and I yanked the padlock free and threw the door open, red and blue flooding the parking lot. 3 cruisers, officers pouring in. 3 inside. They rushed past me and pulled all 3 out in handcuffs. The brother was still wiping his eyes and cursing. Nate came out last. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, and his hands were cuffed behind him, and he was 17 years old. His face found mine across the parking lot, and he held my eyes, and neither of us blinked. The kid who stood between his brother and me with his arms spread was being loaded.
He said he didn't blink, right? He just blinked like 3 times.
Into a cruiser, and I pressed between his brother and me with his arms spread was being loaded into a cruiser, and I pressed both hands over my face. The security camera, battery backup, green-tinted footage of the whole night. The officer played it on his laptop. 3 men entering, me on the floor, Michelle holding Lily, me breaking free, the extinguisher, and at the end, Nate stepping between his brother and me with his arms wide. We have everything on camera, including that kid stepping in front of a crowbar for you. The paramedic wrapped my wrists in white gauze. These are deep. You'll have scars. Michelle's minivan pulled into the lot. She got out, and Lily was asleep in the car seat with Ellie tucked under her arm. Michelle crossed the parking lot and walked straight into me and held on shaking. You told me to run. You needed to run. She's okay. My baby's okay because of you. She brought Lily over and put her in my arms, and she weighed nothing and smelled like baby shampoo, and her tiny hand curled around my finger, and I choked up because this little girl was safe and had no idea what happened tonight. My mom showed up in her bathrobe, police scanner in the kitchen. She grabbed my face and saw the bandages and the bruise and pulled me in so hard my ribs screamed. You're done working nights. Mom, you're done. I buried my face in her shoulder because I was 16, and I'd fought 3 grown men twice and saved a woman from a house, and I wanted my mom, and she was here. The old woman from Miller Street gave a statement. She described the kid who threw a gnome through the van window, and the dispatcher confirmed my 911 call. He ran toward the screaming, she told the officer. Everyone else would have run away. Nate wrote me from county. 1 page. I stepped in front of my brother because you swung a fire extinguisher for a baby you didn't even know. I want to be the kind of person who does that. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. I screenshot it and almost posted it to my Snapchat story, and then put my phone down because some things aren't for the internet. I read it twice. The register was replaced, but the dent in the counter from where his brother ripped the drawer out was still there. My first day shift, I found Ellie behind the shelf where she'd rolled during the fight. I picked her up and put her on the counter. Michelle came in a week later with Lily on her hip, and the little girl pointed and screamed, "Ellie!" and I handed it to her, and she hugged it against her face. Michelle grabbed my hand and held it. She didn't need to say anything. I squeezed
Where's
back.
Lily? Where's Lily? You're just gonna leave her on the floor.
Lily was already toddling toward the candy aisle like nothing had ever happened in this building.
Well, that was eventful. Guess I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace.